Well, welcome, my fellow travelers, to your traveling buddy here, coming to you today from Bay City, Michigan. And I'm out here at Oak Ridge Cemetery, which is, I believe, the oldest cemetery in Bay City. And I'm out here to visit the grave of a man who was the inspiration for a legendary story that everybody tells. This man was called Saginaw Joe, or Fabian Fournier. That's his real name. But people called him Saginaw Joe. But he was the inspiration for another famous person. That till this day you hear about him. Other states have tried to claim this person, but Michigan, they believe the real person that was the inspiration was this guy here in Michigan. So I came out here to Oak Ridge Cemetery, and I know I'm not going to find his grave because they don't know where he was buried. But I figured this is the oldest cemetery in Bay City, so this is where he's possibly buried. So let's go out and I'll tell you the story of Saginaw Joe. Like I said, this is Oak Ridge Cemetery. They believe is the oldest cemetery in Bay City, Michigan. And said they don't know where he was buried. I guess he was in an unmarked grave. But I came out here since they say this is the oldest cemetery in Bay City. And you see there's some old tombstones up here. These are some pretty old stones, so I'm figuring this is where he could be buried at. Don't quote me on it, I'm not saying he is. But yeah, I believe he is buried out here. Now, like I said, he's named after a famous legendary character. Disney has done cartoons about this character. There's books about this character. Other states have statues of this character. Fabian Fournier, or Saginaw Joe, is the inspiration for Paul Bunyan. Yes, you heard me right, guys. He is the inspiration, they believe, for Paul Bunyan. He was a French Canadian that moved here after the Civil War and worked in the lumber industry. Now, of course, we know he wasn't really, 10 foot tall or whatever, all that kind of stuff. He was actually only about a little over 6 foot. It said when everybody else back then was old. The typical man was probably only about 5 foot. And they said he worked in the lumber industry. Now they say, one of the legends of him, they say he used to have 2 rows of teeth, which he used to bite rails off, I guess. But one thing about him is one of his favorite pastimes was he liked to drink and he liked to brawl. Well, one day he came here to Bay City, Michigan, and supposedly got into a fight with a guy that worked on the shipping line right here in Bay City. And I guess they went back and forth, and then this guy picked up a shipping mallet and hit him over the head and killed him. It killed him instantly. And they say they don't know where he's buried at. Now, that's why I'm thinking he's buried here. Because, back in the 1800s, this was back in the 1800s now and stuff like that, during the Civil War, they didn't really transport your body back to your home state or hometown. So I figured they probably brought him here and buried him here. Yeah, that's my opinion. Fabian Fournier, a French-Canadian timberman who moved south and got a job as a foreman of a logging crew in Michigan after the Civil War. 6 feet tall at a time when the average man barely cleared 5 feet. When giant hands, Fournier went by the nickname Saginaw Joe. He was rumored to have 2 complete sets of teeth, which he used to bite off hooks of wooden rails, and in his spare time enjoyed drinking and brawling. One number night in 1875, Fournier was murdered in the notorious rowdy lumber town of Bay City. His death and sensational trial of the alleged killer, who was acquitted, fueled tales of Saginaw Joe's rough and tumble life in his lumbering brawls in logging camps in Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and beyond. Over time, Fournier's legend merged with one of another French-Canadian lumberman, Bon Jean. Jane had played a prominent role in Pandu Rebellion of 1837, when loggers of the other working men in St. Augusta, Canada, revolted against British regimen of the newly crowned Queen Victoria. The French pronounced Jean's full name is believed to have evolved into surname Bunyan. The first Paul Bunyan story, Round River, made it into print in 1906, penned by journalists for a local news Michigan. In 1912, McGarvey collaborated with a poet on a Bunyan-themed poem for American Lumberman magazine, earning Paul Bunyan his first national exposure. 2 years later, an ad campaign for Minnesota's Red River Lumber Company features the first illustration of a larger-than-life lumberjack, combined with pamphlets explaining the tales of the exploits and his prominent appearance as Red River's mascot, would help turn Paul Bunyan into a household name and enduring American icon. Like I said, my opinion, I think he's buried somewhere out here in an unmarked grave. I mean, he could be buried right here. Nobody knows. I guess they don't have any records of where they buried him. So he just could be any unmarked grave out here. I don't know where if they have like a potter's area, but I don't even know back in the day they had a potter's area. You know, it's kind of sad. And how he became the legend of Paul Bunyan, they say after he died, guys used to sit around the fire, used to tell a story. His story's all about him, you know, he was a character, I guess. And they said, then through time, it started getting embellished of how, you know, what he was. And of course, as this starts getting embellished, somebody decided to write the story down, made him 10 foot tall or giant, and you know, all that kind of stuff. Well, how he carved out Grand Canyon obviously we know that's not true, you know. And Babe the Blue Ox did not exist. Even in the story I telling about him, there was no Babe the Blue Ox. But there's your legends. I mean, that's one of our legends. The story is always told. There's statues of him everywhere. And the other thing is, he didn't have the beard like everybody showed him. You know, he didn't have that big burly beard. He was actually a skinny man. And I wasn't a big burly guy. He was skinny. From the picture I showed you, he was a skinny man. Said, but as people talk about him, they made up different things in the stories, and then some guy decided to write the story down, and now it's part of American history. The legend of Paul Bunyan. And I believe he's buried out here. And I'm surprised that they don't have statues of him. I mean, they do have a statue up in the UP of Paul Bunyan. And I think there is another one somewhere out there of Paul Bunyan. But there's not statues anywhere else. So here's another section that looks like some pretty old stones. They got one of those cast iron ones right here. A bunch of these are cast iron. Look at that. See, he could be possibly buried right here. I mean, I don't know. Anywhere in these older sections, I believe, he could be buried. I mean, look at, there's not really any stones in this area. So he could be right there. Nobody really knows. I looked it up on Find a Grave, and all it says is his death was in Bay City. And like I said, I started looking up, you know, the oldest cemetery in Bay City, and it said it was this one. It was either this one or the Pine Cemetery, but they say they believe this is the oldest. Look at this statue up here. Lady praying to that woman. It's beautiful. Wow. Well, there you go, my fellow travelers. There is the story and the legend of Fabian Fournier, or Saginaw Joe, or Paul Bunyan, whatever one you want to call him. Said, I believe he's buried out here. This is like one of the oldest. They say they believe this is the oldest cemetery in Bay City. So I'm figuring he's buried out here. Don't quote me on it. I don't know for sure. They don't even know where he's buried at. But I believe he's buried out here. But I at least want to tell you the story of Fabian Fournier. Yep. So I've been wanting to do this one for a while. I heard about the story. Happened to look it up, you know, because a lot of the legends are based on real people. There was a real Johnny Appleseed. There was several other, you know, dime store stories that we see all the time are based on real people. And the real Paul Bunyan is credited in Michigan. Not Minnesota, not Wisconsin, which they are trying to, they always say that they are the, you know, the home of Paul Bunyan. Nope, right here in Michigan. You know, I mean, that's my opinion. I'm sure there's probably some people from them areas are gonna see my video and say, "Oh no, he was born, he was here." No, right here in Michigan. Paul Bunyan, Saginaw Joe, Fabian Fournier. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Share me out. Share me out on all the social media. Tell your friends, tell your family about me so I can continue traveling and showing you cool stuff like this. Also, leave me a comment. Any comments appreciated. Any ideas for me to do? Let me know. I just might show up and do it. So till next time, my fellow travelers, I'll see you around the mitten.